Jimmy Horn was almost a shoe-in to go ahead and make this team. Jimmy Horn Jr. has his first real deal NFL game this Sunday against the Jaguars. So we're going to do a separate video because obviously Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, I think that's going to be interesting. But speaking just about Jimmy Horn, we haven't talked about him in about a week or so. The last thing we talked about was him beating out a real deal veteran to make the 53-man roster for the Carolina Panthers. And I want to stress that he didn't just beat a veteran, right? He beat somebody who was known for route running, right? Who was known for one of the better utilities that Jimmy Horn, Jay Fleazy, possesses. So here we are a week later, and Hunter Renfrow, that, wide receiver a lot of people thought was being made space for, as well as Adam Thielen, are on either off the team or different parts of the team. Obviously, we spoke about the Adam Thielen trade and it being or just a thought process in that last video. It is now official. He is off of the depth chart, and Hunter Renfrow is back. And I just thought this, before we get into any more Jimmy Horn stuff, this is a very funny story. This is Hunter Renfrow speaking about how he almost missed the call to be on the practice squad for the Panthers.
And my daughters were in the car. Like, I was right outside the car. I wasn't just leaving them in there. But I guess I had like 10 minutes phone calls from Dan, Dave, my agent, and they were all just ignored. My daughter's watching Bluey or something. She so got back in the car and had that conversation, I guess. That had been on Thursday maybe. And then just made sure that this is what I wanted to do. Made sure that this is where I wanted to be, which I was pretty sure of it. But just wanted a couple of days to kind of make sure it was good with my wife and my family to go and give everything I got to it.
Hunter, Dave said.
Now, I thought that was a funny story. Now, like I said, Hunter Renfrow was initially brought on to the practice squad when they were making the cuts and stuff. But he, on the first unofficial depth chart, is one of the starting wide receivers. So I don't know how that happened. But again, when you're a vet like that, it seemed like they were making space. They got rid of Adam Thielen, and then they said, hey, we can bring Hunter Renfrow back and still have Jimmy Horn. Now, I will point out that Jimmy Horn is looking to be a, third string wide receiver. So he is not going to be theoretically a prominent part of this team right now. Now, what this does show me, though, right, is that, it's easy to look at this and say, oh, my God, Jimmy Horn's not a wide receiver one. He's not this, he's that. Hunter Renfrow is, blah, blah. Like I told you, Hunter Renfrow has comfortability within the system. He has a bit of a veteran-ness. I think that's right. Veteran leadership, veteran experience to him. So it's a little different game than it is for Jimmy Horn Jr. So I want to make that, and this is a conversation that can be had about any rookie, right? I think we all need to understand that they are rookies. This is their first time. Sometimes them being behind somebody like Jimmy Horn is behind Bryson Tremaine, which I will point out, Bryson Tremaine, his NFL career statistics as of 2024 is 1 reception for -2 yards. But sometimes it's not just about stats and facts for the reason why especially a rookie is not starting, right? It could be a lot more to do with, hey, I want my wide receiver 3 to be a little more of this, be a little more of that. And I think it comes down to things that are a little more different than just simply, okay, he's a wide receiver 3. But I will say he's one step closer. And more importantly, if the number Bryson or Mr. Bryson Tremaine is somebody who continues to, run up his stats like he's done previously, it's not going to take long for Jimmy Horn to slide right here to that second role. And if you're a wide receiver 2, David Moore, a wide receiver 2, as Panthers fans, y'all probably know, David Moore is going to be integrated, right? The wide receiver 2 is typically integrated in the league. And the good thing is some Panthers fans believe that Jimmy Horn will get a similar treatment. So Bryson Tremaine being ahead of Jimmy Horn Jr. on the Panthers depth chart isn't shocking. We'll see how the snap count looks, and I bet we'll see some manufactured touches for Horn, which I think is just a great way to just get him open and get him in space. But it's a reminder that he's going to have to work to carve out a role in this wide receiver rotation. And here is David Canales, who has said almost nothing but positive things about Jimmy Horn Jr. And here he is speaking August 21st about Bryson absence from the preseason finale, and if he could make the 53-man roster. Now, I want y'all to remember, there was a big uproar about this, and people thought Jimmy Horn was going to get traded because of how little play he got in the last preseason game. And this is Bryson, who got no play in the preseason game. So this is what he thought about that at the time.
Dave, you made a decision on the kicking competition?
Not yet. No, we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Is there a reason why you didn't let Matt attempt to kick, just because
It seemed like you were doing halves, like first half, second.
Yeah, I think just opportunity.
Dave, what was the thought process behind not playing Bryson Tremaine tonight?
Yeah, just general body soreness. Felt good about the work that we saw him have in the first 2 weeks, and then bounced back this week for really just kind of a grinder practice 2 days ago, and we shut him down in the middle of that practice. We just didn't feel good about being able to turn him back around that quickly to get him out there in the game.
What does that speak to his roster chances?
He's got a good chance, and for Bryson to really show what he can do offensively and then on special teams as well. He really made a statement for himself on this team. So something that we weigh heavily, and so just excited to have the conversation and see how that all plays out.
Dave, what do the next couple of days look like for you?
So it's easy to just be upset. It's easy to just be like, oh, because David Canales said some of the similar things about Jimmy Horn. It's easy to just be like, oh, well, he's just double talking. He's just whatever. But it seems like Jimmy Horn also got enough work, got enough, presence, and they thought and they were confident in them in the same way they were with Bryson. And I say that to say, hey, man, give Bryson a little shine too. He's clearly doing what he needs to do to be in the place that he needs to be, and has hopefully shown the coaches that, right? He earned his spot on the roster that, clearly wasn't a guarantee. So the fact that both Jimmy Horn and Bryson are there, I think it's going to be less of a heated competition and probably more of an elevation of both of the young players and seeing how they can kind of take those next steps into their career. But yeah, so that's what Bryson has, or what David Canales had to say about Bryson. Again, David Canales had plenty of positive things to say about Jimmy Horn Jr., whether it's the route running, whether it's the work ethic, right? So I think that Jimmy Horn was almost, as a 6th-round pick, was almost a shoe-in to go ahead and make this team. Now, something that is probably the most shocking thing on this is the fact that, if you can see, Jimmy Horn is the last kick returner and the last punt returner. Now, he did have some punt returns go decent in the regular season, in the preseason. And I will also point out that Trevor Etienne is a rookie who's going to be serving both roles. He's not out of Florida, is he? He's out of Georgia. He transferred to Georgia. I forgot. But he was the running back anyway. So I really want to point that out, and he did have some decently successful returns, but the other thing I want to point out is this isn't like a LeJonte Western situation where he was coming into a team with awful punt returning and like known for bad punt returning. Panthers fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just never knew that to be the case. Unlike the Ravens, which it was notorious that they had a bad one. So I'm not saying that it was elite, but not off the charts or anything like that. But here he is the 3rd punt returner, right? Now he's behind David Moore. But maybe that means that they see him more as a wide receiver and then less of a special teams guy. It's just odd to me that you have him on the team, like in the same breath. It's clear that they value Jimmy Horn, right? The easiness or the ease of him getting on the team. There was no him being moved around. It was just, hey, you're there. Even though they brought Hunter Renfrow back, Jimmy Horn Jr. is still on the team. They didn't make room with Jimmy Horn Jr. I think they clearly see him as an asset that's going to continue to blossom to something that theoretically might be great on offense. I hope that that's just what that means, and not that Jimmy Horn isn't going to get those opportunities at punt return, because I feel like the more opportunities and more touches Jimmy Horn gets, it's going to be the betterment for your own team, right? I think it's just that explosive, that fast, that some things positive are going to happen whenever he gets his hand on the ball. Now, offensive coordinators, very important to shine a light on. Mr. Brad Idzik is going to talk to Ari Mirov on FanDuel, and it's about this youth movement in the Panthers wide receiver room. Obviously, Jimmy Horn being a part of that. These are the ages for all of the wide receivers. T-Mac at 22, Xavier Legette, who was just drafted, I believe, last year at 24, Jalen Coker 23, Jimmy Horn Jr. 22, Bryson Tremaine 25, David Moore is 30, and I think Hunter Renfrow is like 78 years old. Nah, he's not that old. So besides him, David Moore, and Hunter Renfrow, now you have a really young wide receiver core. So what was it like? The offensive coordinator see that? We're gonna go straight to 33.
There's some excellent receivers from a DK and a Mike Evans and a Tyler Lockett and a Chris Godwin. How has it been so far being involved with such a young receiving room, and then having a big-bodied guy like a Ted Raw McMillan, who was drafted number 8 overall? How exciting is it to know that, A, you have a guy like him, but also just the room being so young, and there's so much room to grow for everybody in this room? Just how cool is that?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The first thing you do is you figure out how guys learn. What's the best mode of of getting a guy to click into the whys. I think the modern coaching is a lot of predicated on the whys and making sure that they understand, why are we placing you here? What are we trying to accomplish? And that just makes the plays come to life for the players. That helps them understand why we're telling them to take a certain split so we can buy this leverage. That's where me as a coordinator now, where I'm once removed from just coaching a singular position. That's when I see those little things, when I see the little like wheels churning in a player, whether it's the running back room, the tight end room, whoever it is, or the receiver room, then I can pull that player aside and say, hey, we didn't just do this just to do it. Like, here's the why behind the play. Let me paint the big picture for you. And then when we have the full group in the offensive room together, that's the biggest thing I focus on. I tell them my job is to make sure that this feels right. The whole thing feels right. And I'll, take my little avenues to make sure that the right coaching points are getting through, but we have great coaches that help support me in that. So the whole thing, showing the big picture to all the guys in the room at the same time, that's I think helped us go like this. So I'll have the O-line in there, understanding like, hey, we got to hold on to the ball a little bit more of this concept for this reason, or I'll show why a 5-man protection might not hold up, so the receiver can have the understanding that I might need to speed up this route a little bit. Those types of things, how it all fits in together. I don't expect them to know all the details of the other position, but I want them to respect the big picture. So that part's been a really fun challenge of making sure when those moments come up, when something about the whole play just feels a little bit off, go ahead and address it to the whole group and make sure that everybody's like in touch with those whys. And those young guys, it's helped a ton with T-Mac. He's got such a great a football feel. He does a lot of the right things on his own, but the second you feel like it might be, he's thinking a little bit too much, you just give him the why and then he's off and running. So then he moves on pretty quickly and he's growing exponentially because of it.
Jalen Coker, I know he'll miss the start of the year. How cool is it to see an undrafted guy?
Probably even better, if I wasn't muted that entire time. I think it's great to speak about how, development works and how they see development, especially when you speak about a young team, right? You have a young quarterback leading this room, leading this team for a young wide receiver core, right? With a lot of personalities too. Jimmy Horn is a large personality. Xavier Legette is, doing commercials and chilling with Glorilla or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Nobody can understand what the fuck them niggas are saying. But it's a great time and a great, I think, acknowledgement from the offensive coordinator to understand what he has, right? I think a lot of time, you see this mostly in college football. There's a lot of coaches who want to just kind of throw their hands in the air and say, hey man, these younger group are, I can't reach them. I can't this, they're not hardworking. They're not that. And I just think that's just the biggest myth, right? I don't think that there's no way that your grandfathers and your grandfather's grandfather had grew up always saying this new generation is lazy. This new generation is soft. That's what y'all say every single time. So is it that, or is it that you're not putting the work to understand, okay, well, what makes them go? Like how do I get in and penetrate and teach? Pause. How do I teach? How do I get to their minds in what way that actually simulates them and allows them to learn and take those next steps? And if that's, explaining the why, if that's slowing things down, if that's, as from this offensive coordinator who's been experienced with a lot of different great wide receivers and wide receiver rooms, hey, maybe it's just slowing these guys down. Maybe it's putting these things in perspective for them. So I like that a mindset, right? And I know we heard the GM for the Browns, the assistant VP, she didn't sound as confident, even with, Kevin Stefanski, right? I think for as much as we talk about people saying nothing while saying everything and how that's a value in some aspects, I think it's also even more valuable to point out when there are people who are doing it and still giving great insight, letting you know what the mindset is about and letting you know that, hey, there is a true trust and a true next level that, we're trying to get these young guys to be just because they're great athletes. But, hey, man, Jimmy Horn Jr. is one step closer to being a starter in this league. He's got to beat out a young guy. He's got to show up, and he's got to, hopefully, if he does get those touches, maximize them to the top tier opportunity, which I think is something that Jimmy Horn is going to do most definitely. So y'all let me know how y'all feel about it down below. Y'all let me feel how y'all feel about Jacksonville versus Carolina. We'll do a separate video about it. Like this video if you like it, dislike if you don't. Subscribe if you like football content of all shapes, sizes, forms, fashions, and everything else in between. We'll see you next time. Be great. Peace.